I truly believe that social media for a lot of people is contributing to their food noise, this thinking about food all day, because they're getting so many opinions all the time. So not only are we seeing everyone that's perfect in these perfect bodies, but then it's also followed with eat this, don't eat that, do this. Oh, this exercise is bad. This one's the perfect exercise. And we become so overwhelmed that we just do nothing.
We should definitely stop saying, I'm treating myself with a dessert, because you are conditioning your brain that sugar is the reward for hard work, when it's actually the punishment, because you will feel terrible maybe right away, or if not, you will suffer the consequences long term.
To your unconscious brain, it's like, well, what the heck? I don't want to give up something that's delicious and pleasurable. When we binge past the point of fullness into a uncomfortable level, it is not pleasurable. It is not helping us cope with anything because it always and only makes our life worse in every area.
What have you seen to be the most difficult thing, the most difficult challenge for people to overcome?
It's this idea of food is not...
Amber Abila, aka The Confident Eater, it's so good to have you on the show.
Thanks so much for having me on today.
Okay, Amber, so we got some statistics here. In the USA, 75% of adults are overweight or obese. In England, where I live, the number is at 64.5%. And in Europe, that number drops to 59%. With the USA having the most obese people out of the three, which is more than 40% of its population. That's almost 1 in 2 people who are obese. What is going on in the West, Amber? Why is it so difficult for people to control their impulses and their eating habits?
So I'll add one more statistic on top of that, where 3% of the US has been diagnosed with binge eating disorder. So 3% is a pretty small proportion when you think about it all, but I think it's actually would be much higher. People often don't go and get the formal diagnosis from their therapist or doctor, though. So a lot of people are either overeating or binge eating for sure. Now, there's a lot of factors within that I'm sure we'd take a whole day to cover, whether it's not an active lifestyle, our processed foods, that we're not sleeping, we're stressed out all the time, we have a big hustle culture here. But what I really specialize in is, why are people binge eating? So that 3% of that population, or, I would say probably a little bit more too, considering how many people are overweight. Why is it that they are struggling with food? In my journey, it started out with dieting. So there's a lot of overweight people, but there's also a lot of people dieting. And it's like, well, why is there so many people dieting, but no one is losing weight? Diets have been shown that 95% of the time they fail, which means people will either gain back all the weight that they lost or more. So we know that not only are people overweight, but the way that they're trying to lose weight is actually leading to them gaining more weight. So it's a really broken system. Now, why is that? When we go on a traditional diet, we are oftentimes going to the extremes. We're cutting out entire food groups. We are reducing our calories by a large amount. And it's usually fueled by this idea of, well, I want results now. I wanted to lose weight 2 weeks ago. And I'm still continuing to gain weight. I mean, really years ago for most people. I want results right now. So we do these extreme things. And for example, you do a juice cleanse. You think, okay, we're just going to do like a fast and we're just going to have juices and we're going to cleanse everything out and be healthy. What happens to our brain psychology-wise, because that's really where I focus in, is on the psychology of why we're eating. Because a lot of people know what to eat, right? People know in general, like, I should eat whole foods, I should eat more fruits and vegetables, I should get my protein, but they're not doing it. And why is that? So when we are on a restrictive diet, what happens to our survival brain is it turns on and it says, wait a second, there must be a famine happening on planet Earth. Food must be disappearing and going away. So what I need to do now is make sure I get as much of it in my body as possible so I don't die. It is a very healthy, normal thing that is supposed to be happening as a response to restriction. We got to remember that, for the last couple thousands of years of humans' existence, starvation was our biggest survival threat. So our brain is very sensitive to changes in restriction in food. So when we're going on these extreme diets, our survival brain is freaking out the whole time and saying, I need food, and it creates this hyper obsession with it. And think about if you were, in a desert and there was this giant bucket of water next to you, but you were only allowed to have a few spoonfuls a day. What would you do? You'd probably obsessively sit by that bucket of water, like waiting for your next spoonful because you'd be so thirsty and dehydrated. And that's essentially what we're doing around food. So I used to feel so obsessed around food. I would be thinking about it all the time. Food noise is a term that's become popularized recently, where people are like, I just have all this noise around food. And a lot of times it's first stemming from this period of restriction. Now, what happened to me is I had that restriction, but then I stopped restricting. I started eating more food. But at that point, it had been like 2 years of me dieting and having this low calorie thing and like obsessively counting food, thinking about food. And so even when I started eating more food again, my brain still remembered that period of essentially famine. And so it created this habit around overeating, where again, even though I was eating enough food, I still felt like I wanted to eat because at that point it became a habit.
Right. And almost everything is about habitual eating patterns. If you
Mhm.
could please dive a bit deeper on what are they and how exactly are they keeping us stuck in these unhealthy loops that we keep going back for more and more, even though we know it's very bad for us?
Mhm. So let's think about a habit loop and how it works. First, there's a cue. There is something that triggers our brain to do the old thing.
Hmm.
So the trigger for most people is maybe they have the food in the house, or they're at a big birthday party and there's a big dessert table out and they're nervous about it. Or every day after work at 5 p.m., they come home, there's dishes everywhere. None of their kids haven't cleaned up, things are everywhere. They just had a long day at work, they feel really stressed, and then they go to food. So that's the trigger. And then that kicks off the habit loop, which then means we get this craving, we get this urge, we have this desire of, I want food. And then what do? We eat the food, and that creates a reward in our brain that then reinforces, oh, this was good. Let's do this
Hmm.
tomorrow because we now got the reward of it. So, what we need to do a big mistake that people make, first of all, is they try to avoid the triggers. They think the trigger is the problem. That if every time I go to a birthday party and there's a dessert table there, well, I should just avoid the birthday party, or I should go hide in the corner so I don't have to look at the dessert table, or I should just never ever bring these foods into my house. The problem with that though is yes, it can kind of like keep that brain pathway dormant. I think about it as like if you were to live in the cave for the rest of your life and not have access to all of these foods, you probably wouldn't binge anymore. But we're not doing anything to change our brain. So it's just like that brain pathway is lying dormant. Nothing is going to happen. So in order for us to actually change our brain pathway, it is required for us to be triggered. Being triggered is a very good thing because that means our neural network has been activated and we have an opportunity to choose differently and literally rewire our brain in that moment. So, what I teach people to do, which is how I overcame binge eating, is I would go into these purposely triggering situations. I would feel that urge, the desire. And the important part is that you just don't act on that urge, that craving.
Right.
And a lot of that has to be the understanding around these urges, these cravings, they can't hurt us. They're just thoughts running through our brain that are creating sensations in our body, but we can handle that. We can get through them. And once we do that, our brain is not getting the reward of food. So then it deconditions that brain pathway because now you've told your brain, oh, this is something I don't want to do anymore. This is something that is not a good part of my life. But I always say the most important part of this process, too, is in order to take that new brain pathway and to have this stick, is we need to give our brain a new reward. That new reward, like, sure, you could go get a massage or do something really nice for yourself. But for most of us, what that reward needs to be is a mental celebration of pride. Anytime we have a strong emotion, it strengthens our brain pathways and our memories around it. You think back to when you were a kid, you remember the times on the playground where you were bullied and you felt really sad. It stuck in your brain. Your brain remembered that. And you also might have remembered the first time you went to Disney World and it was the best thing ever. It was really exciting. Your brain said, oh, this is good. Pay attention to this. So if we just like get through our cravings, we say, like, oh, I made it through. Thank God. Like moving on with my day, which is what most people do, you're not reinforcing the new pathway of not overeating. So what we need to do instead is really celebrate ourselves of like give yourself a party in your brain. Woohoo, go me. I did it. I'm so proud of you. You're going to feel great today. This is amazing. Like I want to do this again. Because then your brain remembers that and says, "Wow, remember last time we went to a party And we were able to sit with this craving, and we didn't go binge on 5 desserts on the dessert table, and you felt amazing after. You were really proud of yourself. You felt energized the rest of the day. You noticed those benefits. Your brain remembers that and says, "Yes, that's what I wanna do again this time now."
I see. So exercising more self-control through positive reinforcement. And it takes effort because just not having the cookie in the cupboard is good, but temporarily, because you don't get the trigger, but you're going to go out into the world, and every coffee shop has,
Right.
well, muffins and sugar. Everywhere is sugar. Here in the UK, the supermarkets are terrible. It's 90% sugar and then 10% whole food. So you're going to get triggered. Not just having it at home won't help. So you need to actively take this effort to go through the triggers but contain yourself and say no and reinforce that with a little bit of pride
Right.
to solidify the new pattern. I see.
Yeah, and a lot of clients will come to me saying things like, "I've tried keeping out of the house," but then they'll go through drive-through on their way home and, like, foods, or
Yeah.
they'll go to the grocery store and they'll sneakily eat it in their car, throw away the wrappers before they come back home, or they'll go to a birthday party, and I've done this. I've eaten in bathrooms before. I've, like, snuck cookies in my pocket and just eaten them really quickly in the bathroom, or in the corner, or, like, all of these crazy things around food because I haven't learned the skill of how to have them in my life and change my relationship with them. There's no doubt that processed foods definitely have an impact on our hunger, our fullness, our body weight, and is a big reason that a lot of our modern society has ballooned up. But there's also a lot going on underneath it. And the way that we are approaching processed foods for this very like hard willpower, don't have them, be good around them approach is just not working for people. That's what's putting people into this all or nothing thinking, getting them in this diet mindset that's ending them up heavier than they were before. So we need to learn a different way where we need to address our psychology around these foods and know that yes, like
Mm,
they are hyper palatable, but if we do not learn how to have them in amounts that feel good to us and occasionally learn how to have them as a treat, then every time we interact on them, we're going to interact on around them in the old way of binging on them and going crazy on them and then restricting them. So it's like we have to learn to find the middle ground in a way that is controlled. And I give a lot of steps in my program on how to do that in like a controlled, actual manner. But it's really important to heal your relationship with them.
right. So binge eating is mainly a psychological response. Thus, emotions trigger our urges, and then these urges make us wanna snack, make us wanna get this super palatable food because they make us feel good. Can you dive deeper, please, into how are these psychological urges formed and how can we control them other than the sheer cold turkey willpower? Do you have any tactics, maybe?
Yeah.
Something we can use, very actionable?
Absolutely. So again, these urges form from this habit loop that kept getting reinforced, right? So every time you were in this trigger, this cue, and then you ate from it, it now has reinforced this pathway. So this can happen around emotional eating, where people have continued to emotional eat every time they're stressed, they eat, and that cues in the pathway. So really any type of situation, any type of food, any type of like thought that you have might trigger this pathway and then you start getting these urges. Your urges are there to try to help you survive and we get urges in all areas of our life. So we get the urge to brush our teeth every morning. If you forget to brush your teeth, you're like, "Oh, I need to go do it. I forgot to do it. Now my mouth feels gross." So they're really beneficial. It's not that urges are bad. It's just that sometimes our brain can habituate in autopilot things that we don't want habituated in autopilot in.
Hmm.
It's just trying to save energy for us. Now, in order to get rid of our urges, at the core of it, to put it really simply, all we need to do is not act on it. And I like to just call that out because a lot of times people will make it this big complicated thing in their head. And I'll definitely share some tools and strategies. But sometimes people are like, "Oh, it's so hard to sit with the urges." And I'm like, all you have to do is actually nothing. And that's the easiest thing of all. Like if you just sat here, one of my favorite kind of examples of this is if you sit on your hands and you think about touching your nose, no matter how long I sat here and thought about touch my nose, touch my nose, touch my nose, I'm not going to touch my nose until my higher brain, the part of me that's in charge of my motor functions, says, "Okay, you can lift up your legs and touch your nose now." And so I
Hmm.
Yeah, this one's just like a nice one too because you're like kind of sitting on your hands. So if you're at like a dinner table, it can be act as like a deterrent of like you're not grabbing the food anymore. But it's a really good reminder that you have control over your actions. And that again, just because you're having thoughts or sensations in your body that are suggesting that you want to eat a lot of food, it does not mean you actually need to eat a lot of food. This is just your brain's autopilot response. So, your urges can't hurt you. They can't make you act. We learned this from the time that we are 2 years old, that if you don't want to hit someone, you're in charge of that. You can keep your hands to yourself and you can sit with that desire to hit someone, but that doesn't mean we actually want to do it. So we know how to control our bodily functions. And that's just really good news because so often we feel so out of control around food. Like I used to feel like I was a ghost out of my body going into the cabinet, but it's a good reminder that we're always in charge of our body. The other thing that I have as a resource that you can give your people in the show notes is a guided urge audio. So, this is an audio that will help you stop a binge in its tracks. So, I
Hmm.
create audio because I so desperately wish in my journey that I just had someone to like lovingly walk me through this and be like, Amber, you don't want to do this. This is not your true self. This is just your brain going on autopilot mode. And this isn't going to help you. You every time after a binge, never was I like, oh, I'm so glad I did that. It was always, oh no, the guilt, the shame, the physical feelings in the body. So I use that audio as a way to help me remind you now of what really is going on there. Now, in that audio, I also
Mhm.
walk people through a visualization. Visualization is a super highly powerful tool that is used by CEOs, executives, athletes. People will pay like $4,000 for a session on visualization because of how powerful it is. And it's a really underused thing by a lot of people. They have done studies where people playing piano for an hour every day for the month, and then they imagine playing piano every day for the month, and they show the same improvements in their piano skills. Why is that?
Crazy.
Yeah, it is. Our brain does not often know the difference between a real and a well imagined experience. So, a lot of people will see this happening when you're in your car, you're driving home, and you're like mad at your spouse. You're imagining the whole argument in your head. You're going back and forth. And then you go into your house and you're like mad at them already. And they're like, well, nothing's happened. But you had just created a reality of an argument in your brain and literally created a physical reaction in your body of anger where you start
Wow.
feeling hot, you're feeling all worked up, you have all this energy coming. Not because the argument happened, but because your brain just pictured in depth a very visual argument. So, anytime we visualize something, we are creating essentially like an imagined memory in our brain that is changing our brain in that moment. So we can use this to our advantage. And what I do in the visualization in this audio is I help you see you have two paths here, right? When you want to overeat, you can take path A, which is you overeat and then you feel really bad after. You notice the wrappers around you. Your body feels stuffed. You feel that blood sugar high, but then you get the crash. You're feeling tired all day. You can't sleep that night. You are giving your brain that future memory that this is not something I want to do. Because what we often do is we tell ourselves chapter one of the story. I ate the food, it's delicious, the end. Moving on. And that's not what happens. There's chapter
Mm.
2 through 10 that where we feel really shitty in our body and we feel really bad. And we don't tell ourselves that story. So by giving ourselves that memory of, and it can be a past memory too. All of us have pretty much had the experience of overeating it and it was painful. So we can give our brain that past memory of, look, remember how it feels when we overeat. Remember the after effects. So that's path A. And then we can also take path B, which is where we sit with this urge. And we get through it. It might feel a little uncomfortable for like 30 seconds, but then we get through it. We move on with our life and we feel really amazing. And we want to paint a very beautiful picture of our life and what that would look like. Wow. Then I'm going to
Mhm.
sit down at my desk today for work and I'm going to feel so focused in. I'm going to feel energized. My boss is going to compliment me and say, wow, Amber, like you're really on it today. Like I'm so proud of you. Like maybe I should give you a raise. And then you get through the rest of your day. Maybe you go to the gym, you're feeling energized. You go to sleep that night, you're able to have like a really deep sleep because you didn't have that blood sugar high and low. You wake up the next morning feeling focused and ready to take on the new day, proud of yourself again. So when you picture that beautiful alternate reality where you do get through this urge, then your brain says, "Wow, that's something that I would like to do. That sounds really nice." And then that makes it more likely that that's the path you'll want to take.
I love that. I would have never thought that you can use visualization to control your eating habits, but it does make sense. What are the right or wrong things to do for it to work? Because I assume many people will try it, maybe they're gonna fail a few times, or they're not gonna see results right away. So what do we need to keep in mind when we're gonna do this visualization process of yours?
You want to keep your end goal in mind. So, like, what is the purpose of this? So you might think like, oh, well, if I'm visualizing the overeating, then I'm gonna want to overeat. But
Hmm.
what we're actually visualizing is the negative effects to show your brain that memory. And again, the positive effects of when we're not doing it. So, one of the mistakes that people can make with visualization is they start to visualize a positive experience. So they visualize themselves with the chocolate downstairs and they're thinking about it and how good it would taste in their mouth and how smooth and yummy it would be. And that is going to create a future positive memory of like a good experience. And sometimes it can be a good experience. Like if we truly just have that one piece and move on, it might be something that is pleasurable. But if we were going to go into that experience with the intention, but I actually want to eat like the whole bar of it, like I'm not going to stop at just that one, then we want to show ourselves the truth of what happens when we go in with those thoughts, which is usually we overeat, we binge, and we want to tell ourselves the truth about that. So there was one exercise that I do a lot with clients too. I mentioned the urge audio is a good tool for urges, but something I have them do is to visualize how the food breaks apart in their body. And I always give the disclaimer when I'm taking people through this exercise that we're kind of skipping over the mouthfeel part. We're putting it in and then we're imagining it going it down. Just chewing, swallowing it to mush and allowing it to go down. So if we were to sit there and think about, oh, it's going to be so tasty in our mouth, that will create a different experience than if we think about what happens as it goes down and starts to break apart in my body.
Interesting, interesting. So you focus more on the health part of it, like what happens after the pleasure, because most people, as we already said, they eat for pleasure, and that's how these urges emerge or patterns start to create. But from
Mhm.
the overall journey for your clients, what have you seen to be the most difficult thing, the most difficult challenge for people to overcome?
It's this idea of food is not it's this idea that food in large amounts is pleasurable and getting rid of that idea. That is the hardest thing.
Mm,
Because a lot of times, especially in addiction recovery, we're taught that we're doing these behaviors to cope, and that they're helpful in some way to us, that they're pleasurable, that we get joy from them. And then they say, and now we have to give them up. And to your unconscious brain, it's like, well, what the heck? I don't want to give up something that's delicious and pleasurable. And
oh,
so that makes the experience feel really hard. So, all that I've kind of mentioned so far today, that's all kind of building up this belief and the truth of showing our brain that when we binge past the point of fullness and to a uncomfortable level, it is not pleasurable. It is not helping us cope with anything because it always and only makes our life worse in every area. Again, never after
eventually.
a binge was I like, my life is so much more stress free now. I just feel like I truly got to relax.
Uh,
Like, that was such an enjoyable evening. No, it was always chaos. It was like I would binge and then I'd be so flustered. I'd be feeling horrible in my body. Like, my whole night would be ruined after I overate. So it really was not helping me cope with anything. So sometimes when we're telling ourselves that story, it's hard to let go of because it is such a popular narrative of like, oh, this is helping you. And yes, there is some part of you that does want to do it. Otherwise, you wouldn't do it. There's some part of you that is using it as like an excuse to take a break or an excuse to relax. But it's not actually giving you that relaxation or pleasure because it ends in pain.
yeah, no, that's so relatable. And as you were saying that, I also thought about the language that we use around food and how that can be also very important. For example, instead of saying, "Oh, I have to have this donut," just say, "I want to have a donut." Or instead of saying I have to stop eating snacks, like I'm choosing not to have snacks for the time being, because language matters, right? And we should definitely stop saying I'm treating myself with a dessert, because you are conditioning your brain that sugar is the reward for hard work, when it's actually the punishment, because you will feel terrible maybe right away, or if not, you will suffer the consequences long term. So
Mhm.
that's also one thing that we can change almost right away, and it's could be the easiest one. I don't know.
Absolutely. Yes, our language is so powerful. And if I were to sit here and tell people, like, I just want you to notice your experience in your body. If I say, don't do this, you can't have this is bad. No, no, no. When I'm saying that, I can feel my body kind of shrink up
Yeah.
and go towards. I'm like, it's like scary to our brains. It creates a fear response. Versus if I say to you, you get to choose, you get to decide, you get to
Mm.
choose anything that feels really good to you. You have the power. You're in charge. You feel like, yeah, like I am. I get to say yes to what I want to if it feels good to me. So, yes, our language is like creating all of these responses in our unconscious brain that can have a much bigger impact than we imagine. And when we're telling yourself all these hard and strict rules and feeling a lot of fear and scarcity around food, we're going into fight or flight mode. And then we're not actually able to access parts of our logical higher brain because we're not thinking as clearly then.
Yeah, absolutely. In my preparation for this interview, I noticed that I mean, I read this stat that women account for 65% of the people with binge eating disorder. Sorry. Why do you think we find these more prevalent in women rather than men? I would assume it has to do both for psychological and societal factors behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. Women just in general are conditioned to believe that a smaller body is better, and men definitely have their own body image struggles, but there is a higher level of social pressure on a
Hmm.
woman's physical image and how it appears to the world, to men, to other people. Whereas men are usually more valued in like, what do you do for work? And how good are you in the sport? Which is a little bit of a different social pressure, but as far as body image and weight goes, there tends to be a higher pressure on women. And then if we think about again that statistic that the majority of people that diet will fail and end up gaining all the weight, if women are really wrapped up in this diet culture and it's just been passed down from generations to generations. Your mom dieted and your grandma dieted, and then all of your friends are dieting. So it's a big social thing too, where people almost bond over this of like, oh, what's the latest diet that you're doing? What are you trying? What's working for you? And so it almost creates like this social bubble where it can feel hard to escape that of like the struggle with food and with weight. But yeah, so there's like all these social pressures on women. Also, biologically, women are a bit more sensitive to restriction. So,
Hmm.
I'm not an expert in intermittent fasting or any of the nutritional protocols. But from what I found in my own experience, a lot of the women I work with is that more of these strict rules around food don't work for them as well as they might do for men. Because as women, our body's main function ultimately biologically is to reproduce and to hold a baby and carry it. And our body will hold on to more body fat than men's for that reason of it needs to have the resources in order to grow a baby. And so anytime we are restricting, it can have a little bit more of a quicker tipping point of going into binge eating land because our body is always trying to make sure that we have enough healthy weight on us in order if we were to carry a baby.
Right. And from a societal standpoint, with all this pressure, you are in a way constantly reminded to hate the way you are. Unless you are this very specific idealistic thing, you should hate the way you are. And I saw in one of your Instagram posts where you said, hating your body is a form of self-oppression. Could you please explain to our audience why?
Absolutely. This was a huge insight in my journey because anytime society puts down a certain group, it is oppression. And we are oftentimes oppressing ourselves, though, by giving into the societal standard. So, what that means is if I'm sitting here and saying, well, I don't want to go in the pool because I don't like the way my body looks, that is me giving in to society's belief that I am unworthy because of how my body looks. And I don't deserve to have a happy pool memory today because I am at a different size. So that is a way that we are taking what society believes as a whole, and this is a very strong generalization, but
Of
essentially
course,
these
yeah.
messages that we're taught, and we're internalizing it. And then we start to act from that place of, I'm going to put myself down. I'm going to make myself less than. I am going to prevent myself from going after opportunities because of the way I've internalized this idea from society that more weight equals bad or unworthy or unlovable. So it's just a really important insight to have when you see that. You're like, wait, I don't want to oppress myself. Like society already does enough of that as it is with all different people in all different walks of life. And so it's us being able to separate out society's beliefs from our beliefs and seeing that, yes, society that profits off of me being insecure and hating my body is different than what I want to choose to believe about myself, which is that I am lovable, I am worthy, I am amazing at any weight, shape, or size. Yes, health, we can talk about that and that gets into it, but that doesn't do anything to take away from our worth as a human being. And when we can come back to that of no matter what health I'm in, no matter what weight I'm in, I am still a worthy, lovable human being, then we are creating our own beautiful beliefs about what matters to us and what our values are that can be different than what we hear as a whole in the social pressures.
Yeah, and it sounds difficult because you're being bombarded with the messaging all day, everywhere, because we spend so much time on our phones at the moment, and all the time, that's what marketers do. They're trying to grab our attention and feed us all this bullshit, garbage messaging. And if you don't have, I assume, well, a social um, support, like good friends or family, where you can express these ideas and or maybe if you're not, I assume it takes a lot of introspection as well. So you need to be able to sit down by yourself and take the time to shed all this marketing propaganda off you. So it's
Mm.
not very easy.
Right. Another hot take I have about social media is I truly believe that social media for a lot of people is contributing to their food noise, this thinking about food all day, because they're getting so many opinions all the time. So not only are we seeing everyone that's perfect in these perfect bodies, but then it's also followed with eat this, don't eat that, do this. Oh, this exercise is bad. This one's the perfect exercise. And we become so overwhelmed that we just do nothing. And we're so
Yeah.
confused. We don't know how to eat. We don't know how to work out. Before it used to be you opened a magazine, you would read some tips, maybe you try them out, maybe they work, maybe they don't, and you just kind of move on. But now, just like the flood of information that we're getting every second of every day is just really damaging to our ability to trust our internal wisdom and to go back to what do I value about my body? What do
Yeah.
I value in health conversations and what I want to do? And all of that gets really outnumbered by all the people that we're listening to every day other than ourselves.
Yeah. And you said how what do I value about my body? But I would question, do you even value your body? So I work in restaurants here in London, and whenever it's a marathon, you can see people right at the finish, after the finish line, they go straight into the burger shop, get all the unhealthy food they can eat, give me beer, give me dessert. And that makes you questions like, why, what was the purpose of the marathon? Was it to just tick a box and say from the bucket list, or make a social media post that you've done it? Or was
Mhm,
it to become a healthy runner? Because
mhm,
if it was to become a healthy runner, then you just defeated the whole purpose. Or again, you're reconditioning your brain, or the reward, because what, for 6, 8 months, you slept well, you cut on ultra processed food, all these good things, to just shove it all down the drain after you tick that box. So
mhm.
maybe we don't really value our health as much as we say or we want to, and we might just need a paradigm shift altogether and start caring more about our health. As simple as that.
Yeah, and I think it's just a lot of these cultural messages too of like, I deserve a reward. Like, I'm allowed now to go have the burger. Where at when they're running the marathon, they don't want to be seen as the unhealthy person. Everyone knows, oh, so
Hmm.
and so is training for the marathon, and so maybe they feel shame, but I don't want to get the burger out because everyone thinks I'm training for this marathon, so I'm just gonna get the salad or whatever. And so then it's like, oh, I've finally done this. Now I can get the deserving reward of this other unhealthy food. But I say in order for it to be a reward, it has to feel good before, during, and after we do it. So we think about something like going to go get a massage. It feels good before when we're thinking about going to get a massage. We're like,
Hmm.
yeah, fun. It feels good during it. We enjoy it. And then afterwards, it feels good too. We leave the experience really refreshed and feeling rejuvenized. But something like overeating or having a large amount of unhealthy food, it might somewhat feel good before, like when we're thinking about it, it might feel exciting. Maybe it feels good partially when we're eating it. But then the after effects, if it's not making us feel good after, then it's not a true reward and it's not actually pleasurable then it's actually causing pain because there's a lot of things, like having a drink of wine or a lot of glasses of wine that might feel like good in the beginning and while we're doing it, but don't feel good after. So they're not actually a reward then. It's something that can cause us pain and take away from our pleasure of it.
Right. Have you looked at the gut microbiome and how effectively it affects our eating habits? How we're influenced by it? Have you had a look at that?
That's a great question, and it's not really my specialty. I do more of the
Mm,
psychology of it, beyond just the gut and body things. But I will share a personal experience that I've been working with a functional nutritionist, and we've been working on some gut health things, and we've been doing some supplements that have helped my body detox. Um,
okay.
and it has made me so anxious and depressed because my body is detoxing faster than it can release through urine, through poop, through sweat, all of the ways that our body detoxes. And because of that, it's like building up in our body. And what's interesting about this is that has showed me for the first time just like how clearly there is a connection there and that
Mm,
most realizing it because I had a strong reaction to it, it means my body had a lot of environmental toxins to detox from and come out, which then I will feel better with once they are actually detoxed. But yeah, not really my specialty, but I do think it is a part of this conversation, that could be included in future people.
yeah. Because depending on your gut microbiome health, you get different cravings because it affects the chemistry and how it influences your satiety levels. So if you have a diet which is heavy on ultra processed food, often reduces the variety of the gut bacteria in your stomach. And over time, you literally your stomach becomes worse at processing whole foods, just normal foods, and it creates this inflammation. Now imagine if you keep eating ultra processed food and you damage your ability to eat whole foods and you can't process them, when you're gonna eat them, you're gonna feel unwell because they won't digest. So then the next time you won't be reaching for that whole food because it literally makes you unwell. So what you do, you're reinforcing your behavior to grab the Snickers bar, grab the Pringles or whatever it is, the Doritos, and yeah, once you understand the biology, you just you keep realizing how the sugar and ultra processed foods are just the enemy, really. Just
Uh-huh.
zero benefit, zero benefit.
So what you're describing right there, I'll describe the psychology behind that.
Okay.
You have had a moment where you have had like an aha, an insight around, oh, this is how they're reacting in my body. And this is why I don't crave the whole foods and why they don't feel good. And that aha is enough to make you change in that instant and say, wait a second, I'm viewing these foods through a new lens that they're not pleasurable. Remember how we talked about earlier, like the biggest barrier is people are still viewing these things as pleasurable. So when
Hmm.
people have an aha or an insight like this around, oh, I can see clearly now how this food is not bringing me pleasure, but is instead deceiving my body and bringing me pain and not allowing me to process the whole foods that I want to eat. That aha moment rewires your brain in that moment. Like literally, it's going,
Yeah.
and it's like changing that belief in those brain pathways. So the problem that we mostly do is we tell people though, oh, this sugar is bad, processed foods are bad, never eat them. But if they haven't had that insight around it feels bad in my body,
Yeah.
then it just makes us feel guilty. And then we go into all or nothing thinking and then we say, oh, I'm gonna be bad today. So it takes enough of this insight and this awareness. And we never know like when that insight will hit us. There's this famous hypnotist, Alan Carr, who he helped people stop smoking, and he would give all of these like workshops and seminars and things, and he said oftentimes people would get like halfway through a workshop and they would go, I've got it, I'm never going to smoke again, and they would leave and they'd never smoke again. They just like it clicked in their brain. So a lot of us will sometimes have this experience. For me, it was when I started to learn that my binge eating was just a habit. I was like, I've got it, these thoughts aren't true, I don't need to listen to them, they're just going on an autopilot. The moment you realize it's not pleasurable, oh, I have this Oreo and I can't digest my other whole foods after it. And I feel shitty in my body and I have bloating and indigestion and stuff. I've got it. I don't want an Oreo anymore. So it's these little teeny moments and, it's different for everyone, but that's why it's so important to just kind of notice for yourself and get really curious on like, what does my body tell me? Because whenever the experience comes from us, it is much more likely that we'll have an insight around it because we've seen it to be true in our experience.
Right, right. Because if you think about it, all the cigarette packs have those disgusting images of people that have disfigurements and stuff, and you're like, yeah, whatever, I'll have that.
Yeah,
It's gonna be $20,
that's
but
not that bad for me.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that doesn't work. You need to realize it yourself, as you just said. I see. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
And
Otherwise, those messages would work, but they don't.
right. Another interesting study is when people are quitting something like cocaine versus cigarettes, people will quit cocaine faster than cigarettes because they can see the negative effects more easily in their life.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It
Mm-hmm.
is a more drastic change of, oh, this is very negatively impacting my life versus cigarettes is
Yeah.
like, well, I don't know, 30 years from now, I'll probably be dead anyways. Who cares what my life is like then? So it's harder to see the negative impacts of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing with food, right? We're like, oh, some extra cake here and there. I'll have a couple cookies. We don't think about, well, what happens in 60 years from now? So it's harder for our brain to conceptualize. But we can bring those negative facts back to the current moment and say, well, this is how I specifically feel in my body. Or I notice for me, I really hate eating gummy candy because I get this like feeling on my teeth that's grainy and like I don't like it. It makes me really thirsty. I hate that feeling. I feel like I need to brush my teeth immediately. And because I have shown my brain a negative effect that I don't like from eating gummy candy in that moment, I don't want to eat it anymore. But oftentimes we're like, yeah, I guess like gummy candy is kind of bad for my health and my teeth, maybe eventually. But when we can notice those really specific micro details, that's what helps us see that this isn't pleasurable and not giving me what I want.
Exactly. 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 Are there any overlooked parts of health, of healthy eating, or even unhealthy eating with the binge eating that you think society should put more attention to?
I think a lot of people overlook friendships and connections. It
Okay.
is a huge determinant of our health. When people are lonely, they die sooner, they have more health issues, they're more overweight. And it's something I think a lot of people don't think about. And most of the times when people think, oh, I want to get healthy, it's like, well, let me change my eating habits. It is a big portion of it, but it's definitely not the only portion. We have so many other factors of health. And this is often when someone is coming to me and they're struggling with food. If they're wanting to improve their health, we'll look at other areas first that they can work on. So as we're healing the relationship with food, it doesn't feel like we need to be like, oh, cut out this food and eat this and don't eat this. It's like, okay, well, what else can we do that will also improve your health while we're healing your relationship with food? And then we can work on the food things. But yeah, for so many people, our society is getting more and more lonely every day, even though we are constantly connected in online. I really think people don't think of that as like, I'm doing a healthy activity. I'm going to hang out with a friend today. That is me healthy, like promoting my health because that is helping me feel more connected. That is creating stronger social bonds. And there's a lot of research about the connection between those two.
Yeah, and if your friends are people who hang out at the bar every night or at the burger shop for lunch, eventually, either from association, peer pressure, you're gonna what is the expression like cave in? No. Anyway, you're gonna give up. You're gonna have a burger. You're gonna have a drink. Maybe you're gonna have a second one. So yeah, also not just having friendship, but what kind of friendships you have, or maybe you need to take a collective decision as a friend group, and it's like, okay, guys, this is it. No more sugar for us.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think definitely having the right friendships too is
The right friendships.
right social connections. But if you can have people that are the way you want to be, that value a healthy lifestyle, it can definitely be something that is health promoting.
Yeah. Right, Amber. Last question. What do you want to be remembered for?
I want to be remembered for having a unique take on binge eating because for so long in my journey, I felt so broken and so stuck. And binge eating was actually only recognized as an eating disorder in 2013. So that's only a little over 10 years ago, 12 years ago. And because of that, a lot of the information that we teach is pretty outdated, and a lot of the models that we use are just ineffective. And so I really am here because I want to bring this new lens to helping people who are struggling with food, seeing how it can just be a habit, how we can rewire our brain, how it doesn't have to be so complicated as they make it in therapy. Yes, trauma can be a part of food struggles, but I honestly think it is a much smaller piece of the puzzle than we imagine. And once people start to realize the psychology behind their habits and how, again, it can just be a habit, everything becomes so much simpler. It becomes easier to solve, and more people could be freed from food.
Nice. I like that. All right, Amber, thank you for the conversation.
Thanks so much for having me.